Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Innovate4Cities session on advancing inclusive climate action in urban projects through the SDG project assessment tool. My name is Claes Groth. I'm a program manager within unhabitat, and I will take you through this session. I would also like to take the opportunity and thank the organizers for the Innovate4Cities conference, the Covenant of Mayors, but also our participants today from the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, Mott MacDonald, and Bangkok Municipal Administration. This session will take you through and introduce you to unhabitat's SDG project assessment tool. And we will explore how the tool itself can help cities and partners to incorporate adaptation strategies into urban planning and design projects. By that, we will also discuss how projects in their design and delivery can help address and implement the SDGs, but eventually also how local and national governments and other partners can be supported in initiating and accelerating action on climate change. So thank you so much for joining. Just briefly, in addition to the introduction and the overview of the tool per se, our partner and colleague from Bangkok Municipal Administration will introduce us to one of the projects within the Global Future Cities program, a project on flood risk management in Bangkok. And then this session will also include an interactive session, a workshop, where you as audience will get the opportunity to be introduced and actually test the tool. Finally, we will share a few lessons learned from applying the tool within the Global Future Cities program, from lessons learned coming from both unhabitat as well as our partner Mott MacDonald. And we will close the session with some remarks. With us today, we have from the Bangkok Municipal Administration, Mr. Pavaris Mimbangazai. We have Richard Wood, civil engineer within Mott MacDonald, one of the partners working in Bangkok. We have Ms. Kitima Lerutanavisut, unhabitat's expert and local strategic advisor in Bangkok. We have Jean Yu and we have Matthias Lira, both urban planners managing parts of the Global Future Cities program within unhabitat. And then myself, Claes Groth, as moderator. Now, I would like just to give you a short introduction and context to the Global Future Cities program and the SDG tool. And I think that we are all aware of the rapid urbanization taking place across our globe, where now over 50% of the population is living in urban areas, cities and towns. The rapid urbanization is, however, associated with several challenges. We have emissions of greenhouse gases, generation of global waste, energy consumption, etc. But on the other hand, we also have a good opportunity as cities and towns are the major contributors to GDP. Recent reports have further emphasized the need to address the impacts of climate change. And today in our cities and towns, we do see the effects already now in terms of extreme weather conditions, greenhouse gas emissions and air pollutions, stress on water bodies, flooding and rising sea levels. So these are aspects that we urgently need to address through our various areas of work. And we need to turn these challenges into opportunities and see how we can create more livable, habitable areas, urban areas, cities and towns, where, for example, the proper management of water bodies, provision of green infrastructure and public space can help create this better environment. The Global Future Cities program is funded by the UK government and managed through the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. The program started in 2018 and will conclude in 2022. And it's a program that helps to address these challenges that we'll be talking about today by increasing poverty, alleviating, increasing prosperity, alleviating poverty, and this through 30 projects or interventions across the pillars or thematic areas of urban planning, resilience, and mobility. It's a global program where we have 19 cities across 10 countries participating in delivering upon these 30 transformative projects. And together with 5 private sector partners, UN Habitat is contributing to delivery of the program. In essence, we would like to see in the end that the cities, the participating cities, and of course all other cities, deliver upon the SDGs. We would like to see that cities and partners are prepared and are good clients in taking over the projects when they are concluded and handed over. And we would like to explore what experiences and elements within the program that can be replicated and scaled up for enhanced impact in terms of addressing our global challenges. Now, moving into the SDG Project Assessment Tool. I'm sure we're all aware of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda with the SDGs, with the Paris Agreement, and with the Sendai Framework, for example. The SDGs are critical when we plan and further develop our cities and towns, as we can make use of the SDGs to leverage the quality of projects and development interventions. We can make use of the SDGs for projects and development to comply with international investment standards, for example. And the SDGs also provide the framework upon which member states, national governments can report on progress in achieving the SDGs. And of course, connected to this, the voluntary local reviews is also an important instrument for other partners, for example, local governments, to report upon their achievements. And it is against this backdrop and within this context that the SDG Project Assessment Tool was developed by UN Habitat as a mechanism and as a framework to support delivery of the 30 transformative projects within the Global Future Cities program. Ultimately, we see that the tool can help improve the quality of the 30 projects part of the program in their planning, in their development, and in their design, and this to enhance overall sustainability and inclusiveness. The tool is also a mechanism to create an inclusive and participatory process and to create the enabling environment for the projects to be both viable and bankable and implementable in the end, looking at both short, medium, and long-term perspectives. I'll take the opportunity and just mention that the tool itself is available. It's an open source and it's available on the Global Future Cities website, globalfuturecities.org. In developing the tool, which now is being piloted within the Future Cities program, UN Habitat made use of a wide range of norms and standards on urban planning, mobility, urban resilience, data, finance, and legislation. And these this data, this information, this knowledge was then filtered through the Sustainable Development Goals and the new urban agenda. Looking in particular on climate change and environmental resilience, a number of key international recognized publications were used. For example, the City Resilience Index, the Disaster Resilience Scorecard, the City Resilience Profiling Tool, and the Action Framework for implementation of the new urban agenda, just to mention a few. So the tool itself, in view of the Sustainable Development Goals, was framed building upon two blocks of what we call key drivers. Drivers that will help create and spur change and transformative impact, if you will. And on the one hand, we have technical aspects, including social inclusion, spatial planning, environmental resilience, and economic development. On the other hand, we also have what we call effectiveness or governance aspects, including data-driven processes, capacity building and market maturity, urban governance and legal frameworks, and financial strategies. Of course, across this, we have a number of cross-cutting issues that are embedded as part of the key drivers of the tool. Unpacking the key drivers a bit further, they are grouped into 54 sustainability principles. These principles is a modality to link the program, its objectives, to the SDGs. And the principles themselves are then unpacked in a set of performance criteria. And these criteria helps us assess and monitor how a particular project delivers upon the principles and ultimately on the SDGs. With regard to environmental resilience, there are 22 key drivers, 22 sustainability principles that address resilience-related aspects. 7 of them are directly linked to environmental resilience, and we have the additional 15 sorted under the other principles. And in this way, we can help navigate and identify opportunities for the projects to address urban resilience in general, disaster and mitigation of disasters and risks, but also, of course, a set of climate-related actions, whether it's be preparedness, prevention, a response, or a recovery. So the idea with the SDG tool is to apply a holistic approach to development. And if we just look at integrated urban planning and design, we see that through this holistic approach, we have the opportunity to address a number of SDGs. Number 1 on poverty, 17 on partnerships, number 11, of course, on sustainable communities, etc. And similarly, when addressing opportunities or assessing opportunities to reduce exposure and prevent damages from climate disasters, in the same way, we can address several SDGs at the same time. Of course, what we have learned through this program is that the generation and management of urban data is critical, not only to inform projects, but also to facilitate and make sure that decision-making processes are based on evidence. The program has, as I said, 30 projects, and on the screen you now see 3 of these projects that directly address challenges in various urban contexts. In Ho Chi Minh City, there is a drainage system that is being digitized and put in place. In Surabaya, a preparedness strategy is prepared for earthquake preparedness. And in Bangkok, we are developing a decision support system for flood management, and we will hear more about this later. When applying the tool, we thought it would be instrumental to have all partners engaged. So the tool builds upon an iterative process where partners in the very beginning do a selection of the 54 sustainability principles and the related performance criteria for the tool to be tailored and adapted to the unique characteristics of a particular project or a context. And based on this, the tool is applied a number of times throughout the project cycle. And hereby there is a continuous assessment and understanding on how the project's development contribute to the SDGs. And when I say that we thought all partners should be on board, we see the importance of having a multi-stakeholder process, an engagement and a collaboration among all partners. And this is something that I think has been evidenced throughout the process so far. In order to understand how a project meets and delivers upon the SDGs, there is different ways to visualize this. As part of the tool, we have developed what we call an SDG profile, which explains how a project ultimately could meet and deliver upon the SDGs. And through the selection of the principles and through the selection of criteria, we can, as I said, assess and monitor how a project from the beginning to its completion meets the SDGs. I will stop here, and I hope this introduction of the tool helped provide the framework. And I would like now to hand over to our colleague from the Bangkok Municipal Administration to give us a little bit more detail on the project that is being developed in Bangkok. And Bangkok is, as we know, one of the more exposed cities exposed to floodings. So by that, I would like to hand over to Mr. Pavaris. Thank you so much for your attention. And Pavaris, please let me know when I should change the slide.
Thank you so much. So good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. So Pavaris Bangsai, I come from Bangkok Metropolitan Administration. I'm a statistician. Today, I would like to present about the project between we cooperate between Bangkok Metropolitan Administration and delivery partner McDonald's. Next slide, please. And next. Okay, from project background and objective of this project. Nowadays, Bangkok has been affected by climate change and urbanization expansion. It makes Bangkok subject to intense localized rainfall, resulting in flooding, traffic disruption, and economic losses. Department of Drainage and Sewerage is one organization under Bangkok Metropolitan Administration, or BMA. We have responsibility about urban residents, and including flood management. And in Department of Drainage and Sewerage, we have a lot of many hydrological informatics, such as 130-point rainfall monitoring system, 255 hydrological water level measuring system, 30 flow rate measuring system, and 108 flood monitoring system, and 2 weather radar. However, the information is still lacking to utilize as a tool for decision making in water management for executive administrator. So BMA try to seek a new decision support system for flood management to help predict, prepare, and respond to flooding with proactive and evidence-based. Combine the latest digital technology with hydraulic model to enhance existing flood management practice and inform and justify flood management decision banking. Next slide, please. These are outcome and impact. The first, EMA would like to support the development of management information system. And the second, optimization the flood control center to accurately predict the impact of forecast flood. And the third, improving BMA staff capacity by putting decision support system. And the last, providing evidence-based data to improve building regulation and protect green areas. Next slide, please. In this project, we have 4 proof of concept or POC. The first POC 1 is developed for flood hazard map and flood model. POC 2 is improved rainfall forecasting. POC 3 flood emergency response, and POC 4 disaster preparedness and communication. When we finish this project, the final result of this intervention is emergency coordination, public warning, operation and maintenance, and the last, long-term planning for sustainable. Next slide, please. Project scope and current status from this map is large cloud study area. It is located in the inner east of Chao Phraya River and has an area of approximately 17 square kilometers. Next slide, please. This is the SS application of Moata platform. It shows flood monitoring data system, and the red that you see is a large cloud study area. Next slide, please. It is a flood model output from this is a result in POC 1. It shows about flood risk map under each situation that we integrated, such as heavy rainfall on 24 to 25 May in year 2017, and 50%, 20%, 10%, 5%, and 4% unknown existing probability, and the climate change design flood event. That you see is the yellow is have a flood higher than the blue. And next slide, please. This is a product from POC 2. It show about rainfall estimation and forecasting. This project we use vertical profiling radar or VPR system is located at Wang Thong Lang district in the on the rooftop of it. Next slide, please. It's so lucky in the pilot area have a heavy rainfall in Lat Phao on the 2nd October in this year. We applied the SS application for monitor. We found that the result from rainfall estimate from radar in POC 2 and the radar and the rainfall from range gauge are nearly, and for forecasting of rainfall and flood is correct as well. Next slide, please. From this project, challenge and opportunity of this intervention. The first, we have of rainfall in is changed because of climate change in Bangkok area. So BMA must plan a new measure for handle it. And the second, BMA had a chance to learn new technology about a decision support system. And BMA can apply the result from this study for other areas such as historical areas such as Ratanakosin or economical areas such as Sukhumvit. Next slide, please. Lesson learned and key list from this project. The first, capacity building for official staff in flood modeling and get the result to implementation plan of project for flood management and forecasting system to warning people. And classification data which would increase for develop accurate flood model and monitoring situation. And the last, flood with emergency plan and communication system for warning people. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for attention.
Thank you so much, Pavaris. This was very, very enlightening, and it's interesting to see the complex context that you are operating in terms of putting in place this flood decision support system. I would also like to just say it's a very nice picture of Bangkok that you had. So now when we have had a bit of context of the city of Bangkok and how the project is being framed and implemented there, and coupled with the very the general introduction of the SDG tool, and we'll now see how it can be applied in such a context. So I would like now to hand over to Jean Yu and Matheus Lira to take us through this process. Thank you. Over to you.
Thanks, Klaus. If you can let me start sharing my screen.
Definitely, if I can close this one down. Thanks. There you go.
Okay. So for this portion of the session, my colleague Matheus and I have prepared a short mock-up of the SDG tool and workshop.
Sorry, Jean, we cannot see the Menti screen yet. We see something else.
Sorry. Let me try that one more time. Is it working now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. So let me just start over really quickly. So for this portion of the session, my colleague Matheus and I have prepared a short mock-up of the SDG tool and workshop for us to go through together based on the Bangkok project you just heard about. So through this exercise, we hope that you will have a better understanding of the different aspects of the tool and get a sample of how we can incorporate adaptation strategies into urban projects while also increasing their alignment to the SDGs. So we will be using the Mentimeter platform. And for those that have not used this before, here are the instructions. So we encourage you to use a secondary device, whether it's an iPhone or a tablet, so that you can follow the results on our shared screen in Zoom throughout the workshop. So to sign on, either go to menti.com as you see in the top of the slide and type in the code 96063398 or use the QR code on the screen. To make this session valuable for you, we kindly ask that you actively participate. So to start off and get you familiar with the platform, we have a few icebreaker questions. So first, to get a sense of who we have in the room, what is your current profession or area of study? So if you could go to your device and answer the question, and we will give a few seconds for people to answer. It looks like we have a lot of planners, some students, still mainly planners, architects. It looks like we have a very diverse field of study and sectors. Thanks for participating. So moving on to the next question. What kind of challenge related to climate change is your city facing today? It could be, I think, more than one challenge. I know recently, in the past couple of months, there have been a lot of heat waves in cities. It looks like the flooding is a very big issue. Sea level rising, yes. Floods, pollution. Great. I guess there are many challenges that we're facing today. So next.
Yeah, so now we would like to ask you if you can give us voting on some ideas on how the SDGs and other related targets can guide cities to take urban climate action. So you can also vote in more than one option if you think that there's more than one option that can answer this question. So is it about setting goals and targets as guideline for targeted action? Is it about creating awareness on inclusive, sustainable, and resilient urban development? Is it about enhancing community commitment to implement and finance inclusive urban action? Is it about building capacity on climate change related planning and management of sustainable cities? So we can see a lot of people think the SDGs are good for creating awareness, yeah, but also, of course, enhancing commitment is something very important, and yeah, also setting goals. Yeah, so after this warm-up we had, we're going to start the workshop per se. So first, I'm going to give a quick recap of the SDG2 framework that class already presented so that you're very familiar with it and you're all on the same page. Then we're going to go through and simulate different steps of the SDG2. First one, defining a set of sustainability principles. Then we combine steps 2 and 3, in which we assess projects and discuss results. And finally, we're going to simulate providing recommendations. Yep, so let's first have a recap of the SDG2 framework. As class presented before, the SDG2 is structured, first of all, through 8 main key drivers, and one of the key drivers is called environmental resilience. And the key drivers are related to the transformative commitment of the new urban agenda. From these key drivers, a set of 54 sustainability principles derive. They are based on existing norms and standards from UN Habitat and other agencies, and they provide normative principles towards direct or indirect alignment to the SDG targets. Then for each sustainability principle, we have 4 to 10 performance criteria, which support assessing the principles in a more concrete way, highlighting strengths and weaknesses of the projects. So let's give an example of sustainability principle 28, which is related to environmental resilience and integrating water systems. And from this sustainability principle, we have a set of 4 performance criteria, as you can see, which help create more consistent action. In this workshop, we're going to focus more on the sustainability principle level, so like for example, 28, because for the sake of time, of course, we don't have so much time to go into the complexity of the performance criteria. So this is a screenshot of what the SDG2 framework looks like. So as you can see, you have the structure of the key driver, the different sustainability principles and related performance criteria. And very interestingly, we also have a column with the SDG targets for which each performance criteria is aligned. So in the case of performance criteria 28.2, it is aligned to SDG target 13B around integrating climate change measures into policies, but also SDG target 11.5, which is more related to cities and reducing the losses caused by disasters and climate change. So also recapping a bit what class presented, this is how the SDG tool is applied on the ground. First, we bring different stakeholders together to define which set of sustainability principles relate to the scope of the project. Then these selected sustainability principles are used to review the project and assess. Then the results are discussed in a participatory way. And then UN Habitat develops a report that provides recommendation towards improving the project. So let's go together now. It's finally starting the more interactive part to step one, in which everyone comes together to define a set of sustainability principles. So we have consistency and relevance of the tool. So in practice, in reality, the way this happens is that first we provide a training session on how the SDG tool works and giving awareness of the SDGs. Then the delivery partner, so in the case of Bangkok, Mott McDonald is like Richard here with you. Delivery partner is the ones who really develop the project. They would hold the presentation of the intervention. And then there is a common analysis of the main challenges and priorities that the SDG tool should address. And then through a participatory method, all the stakeholders select the 20 sustainability principles that will suit to that project, and leading to a final review of the selected sustainability principles if it really fits the scope of the project. And finally, UN Habitat develops a tailor-made SDG tool project assessment worksheet that's going to be used throughout the whole process.
So as mentioned before, we will be using Bangkok as a case study to tailor the tool and select a set of sustainability principles that would be used to assess the project. So let's recap on some of the content of the decision support system project that we just heard. You can also reference the one-pager, the backgrounds that we provided in the chat, the PDF. But what are some objectives of the project? What is the project trying to do? Who is it for? So we're just going to give everyone a few seconds, minutes. Yes, it's a flood management project that's supporting vulnerable groups. It's for flood warning. There is a risk map involved. Yes, one of the goals is to provide a comprehensive plan and also mitigate and reduce the risk of flooding, aid emergency response. So I think we have a general idea of what the project entails. So now, before we select the sustainability principles, we will go through some of them together. And for the purpose of this kind of simulation, to simplify, we will only focus on the sustainability principles under the technical key driver of environmental resilience. So going one by one, so there are 7 in total in this category, but for the interest of time, we will just cover 5. And just a note that you will be selecting the relevant principles right after this, so to pay attention. So the first principle related to prevention measures is highlighting the need for an assessment of vulnerable areas in planning to help reduce exposure and prevent damage from climate disasters. So on this slide, we included some associated performance criteria to help you understand more detailed questions the project may be asked. So for example, is the project based on a background assessment of both the current and future risk, identifying the most severe and most probable scenarios? Or does the project identify vulnerable urban communities and their needs, including potential measures to mitigate the vulnerability? The second principle in the category of preparedness looks at whether there are references to equipment and systems for early warning and monitoring to help inform emergency response and to reduce damage. So one approach may be whether the project ensures that early warning and appropriate response information is effectively communicated to reach all, especially including the marginalized. So the next principle related to response looks at the value of evacuation and relocation plans to ensure an effective disaster response. Again, does the project engage the community in the development of these plans? Does the project identify relocation areas that are not hazard prone and does not negatively impact natural and cultural areas? I hope I'm giving you enough time to digest all of these. And sorry, we're almost there, so bear with me just a little bit longer. So for recovery, this principle emphasizes resilient design of infrastructure and planning to help restore basic services and ensure reliability during and after disasters. And finally, the last principle looks to integrated water systems to help improve stormwater management. So asking questions like whether the project protects and strengthens relevant ecological systems, including water retention, infiltration, etc. So now, if you could go to your device again and begin to give kind of your input based on the scope of the project that you know. We will now try to collectively decide on which principles should be included to assess the project throughout its cycle. So take a few moments. Oh, it looks like all of them should be included according to some participants. It looks like a few of them, while many think it should be included, I guess some are a bit more reserved. I think these are starting to be less clear in terms of whether they should be in or out, but and some are kind of halfway in between. But overall, it seems like generally all of the sustainability principles maybe should be included. So as part of this process, we would generally have a discussion as we vet through these principles. I guess we could use the chat, or if you want to maybe participate by unmuting yourself and speaking, let us know maybe why you may have included one or the other. But again, generally, it seems like the consensus is that maybe all of these should be included. I do want to give you one kind of anecdote or a narrative where in kind of the real situation in the project, I believe there was a debate on whether to keep the principle 28 on integrated water systems because it was unclear whether the deliverables would be able to assess the retention area. I believe in the end it was kept because of the potential of the project to include such a feature. But it's interesting that here everyone seems to believe that it should be included. So moving on. So the step ends with the project getting a unique SDG profile based on the selections that were made. And this shows, as you see on the left, which SDGs are relevant to the project and the project's potential to align to the SDGs, as Klaus mentioned earlier in his presentation. So now I'll hand it over back to Mateos to describe the next step.
Yeah, so in the practical application of the tool, after the different stakeholders have selected which sustainability principles should be used to assess the project, we come to the assessment per se of the project deliverables, followed by the discussion of the results. So first of all, the different stakeholders review the project using the tailor-made worksheet. And then, so they assess the deliverables against the different sustainability principles and performance criteria in order to identify strengths and weaknesses. So first of all, UN Habitat will support the city authority, in this case, the Bangkok municipality, to review the deliverables through an working session, really understand what is there in the project, and assess through a mediated discussion. In parallel to that, the delivery partner, who is the one who is developing the project, does a self-assessment which helps prepare for a common discussion. This is what I just mentioned, is step 2, called assessment of project deliverables. Then we move to step 3, in which all the stakeholders come together as if we are illustrating in this picture, to really discuss the results that we're giving in the assessment process. So first of all, the delivery partner presents the deliverables, and following, the city authority presents the results from the preliminary assessment that they did. And the results from the delivery partner and the city authorities are used to foster a discussion on like common scorings or points that were not common. And this leads to a guidance to arrive at the final scoring and reach some suggestions or recommendations on how the projects can be improved. So yeah, now we're going to simulate how this would work. So just to give you some clarity, each sustainability principle or performance criteria is assessed on a 0 to 3 scale, trying to answer this question on how much the project is aligned with the sustainability principle or performance criteria. Yeah, as I mentioned before, here we're going to attain to the sustainability principle level. So 0 means this is not included, 1 means it was included but weakly aligned, 2 means sufficiently aligned, and 3 comprehensively aligned. Of course, we, as participants of this workshop, you might not have comprehensive or complex knowledge of the project, but we would like to practice this exercise with you based on the presentation and also the PDF that was shared.
Also, before we go into the actual assessment, we also wanted to give you a quick sample of some of the content of the deliverables as background information. So the sample list includes background analysis and framework in the form of a report, stakeholders engagement plan, flood model and initial results, high-level emergency response plan recommendations, also command and control recommendations for major flood events, and also pilot area considering nature-based and ecological systems. So let's see. So for this workshop, we're going to assess just 2 of the principles. The first one is regarding the identification and assessment of vulnerable areas. So how well does the project align with this principle? So if you can go to your device again and input your numbers. And again, you can just base this on what you know and have heard just from today, from the presentations, and also draw from the previous discussions and conversations as well. It looks like everyone agrees that the project or the scope is sufficiently aligning, or even comprehensively aligning at this point. Paige? That's good to know. I don't know, again, if the chat is live or if anyone wants to kind of participate, but maybe to try to have a discussion. Generally with this, we would also talk about how we can improve the project and what steps can be taken. But in this case, it seems like the project is already aligning well with the project. So this discussion probably would be shorter.
Yeah, but maybe
you know that the project. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So for the second and last assessment, does the project address ensuring effective disaster response through a plan for evacuation and relocation? Again, just basing it off of the facts that were just given to you today and what you heard. Maybe this one is a bit harder to assess. We'll give just a few more minutes or seconds.
Yeah, I think the results are not coming in the graph.
Doesn't seem to be submitted. Online.
Maybe I can. There we go. Refreshed. So with this principle, while most people think it's sufficiently aligned, I guess we do have a few that believe that it's weakly aligned. Could there be a reason for kind of maybe the lower numbers? Or is there maybe something that can be added or done to be improved?
Jean, it's Richard, can I comment on this?
Sure.
So,
thanks, Richard.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry, I should say, I do actually have a copy of the actual tailor-made assessment sheet for the project. So I didn't want to jump in and spoil and give the answers, but I think on this particular one, and I think this is something to be aware of when you're doing the assessment. Obviously, we do the assessment at different stages of the project. On this particular project, we're looking at having 5 assessment workshops. We've just done the 3rd, and obviously these scores progress as you work through the assessment and as the project assessment progresses. So this particular sustainability principle, I think maybe I personally scored this as a 1 because at this particular stage of the project, some of the deliverables relating to this work are later in the program and haven't actually been issued yet. They're being worked on, being planned, and haven't been issued yet. So it's important to remember when we do this tool, this assessment, we're looking at the current progress at this time. It may be, and then maybe that we're, as a team leader, I need to be confident that I have a plan to achieve a higher score later. And it's just often the case that some things in any project, some deliverables, some activities are done earlier and some are done later in the program. So for me, I scored this as a 1 because I know from my knowledge of the project, there's some, we're producing an emergency response plan as part of work, but we haven't issued it yet. We're working on it. So that's my reason for scoring a 1. But in this case, I'm confident I can achieve a 2 or a 3 at the end of the project or towards the end of the project. Thanks.
No, thank you, Richard, for the context and also the supplemental information. I think it really helped. Hopefully it helped people understand how the scoring actually works and the topics and the discussions that we would generally have in the workshop. like this. So thank you, Richard, for your kind of contribution. Let's see. If there are no other maybe comments or feedback, we can move on. So at the end of these steps, the SDG profile will be populated more or less like this, as you see on the left. I think you'll be seeing some of these graphs again in the subsequent presentations, but here the profile shows that the project's strongest contribution is towards SDG 11, which is on sustainable cities and communities, and also SDG 13 on climate action. But just noting that the project doesn't contribute to SDG 3, which is on good health and well-being, also 4 on quality education, and SDG 7, which is affordable clean energy. So it's a very kind of clear graph of information. And also, this is also a sample graphic that would show how the different key drivers are doing relative to each other. So you see here that for the Bangkok's decision support system project, the selected sustainability principles are associated most with the environmental resilience key driver category. And with that, I will hand it over to Matthias for the last step.
Yeah, so in the SDG2 process, after having a very complex and comprehensive process of assessing the project and having common discussions between stakeholders, we would reach a final step, which is around providing clear recommendations on how the projects can be improved. And this is based on, of course, on the discussion, but also the technical expertise of UN Habitat. So a report is prepared with technical recommendations, which is provided to the delivery partners so that they can improve the projects. So just going to have a very quick simulation again. Of course, we didn't have so much time to go into detail, but if you could make the exercise to think through some recommendations that we would have for this project based on the sustainability principles that we assessed against. Yeah, don't be shy to give your answers. Yeah, so in the practical application of the tool, these different recommendations would be gathered into a report. So yeah, interesting to see the importance of community engagement and the clear roles and responsibilities, and also interesting recommendation to link it to spatial development and planning, and of course considering vulnerability, vulnerable groups and vulnerable areas. Yeah. So I think we are done for now.
Yes,
over to you, Jean.
Yeah, thanks, Matteo. So we are done with the workshop. But if you are interested in the tool or have any feedback to share, just please reach out to us either by email, the email address you see here on screen, or through the form at our website at globalfuturecities.org. And with that, we will end this portion of the session, and we will hear from our colleagues in the field with the lessons learned and how the city of Bangkok adopted the SDG tool. So over to, back to you, Klaus.
Thank you so much, Jean and Matthias, for taking us through the various steps of the tool. I think it's quite. I think it illustrated quite well the need to and the necessity to adapt the tool, its setup and application to each and every context, which of course is unique. But I also hope that this workshop inspired everyone to have a closer look at the tool at your own convenience later on. We will now hand over to Ketima and Richard to provide a few reflections on their own experiences from both developing the project, but in particular of applying the tool on the project. And I would also like to encourage the audience to start thinking a bit on what, let's say, reflections you might have or questions you might have as we, towards the end of this session, will open up the floor for more general discussions. But to begin with, I will hand over to Ketima and Richard. Ketima, over to you.
Thanks, class. Yeah. Good afternoon from Bangkok, everyone. My name is Ketima. I'm a local strategic advisor from Thailand. Actually, I have been working for the SDG project almost 2 years, but I would like to share some of my experience to use this SDG tool from from the project of Bangkok. Actually, the Bangkok have 3 interventions, but today I just would like to focus only 1 intervention. The thing that I learned from the tool is it's very, very active tool because, you know, it's open for all the party to brainstorm and discuss and tailoring to their local context. To pre-select the performance criteria, we have the long discussion, and sometimes the words is not clear. We have to define the words. So I think it's really, really adapt to their local context. Next slide, please, class. Yeah, and also during the assessment, we are sharing our decision. You know, from the many projects that have been assessed, we is only 1 person read the report, but this one we are asking for the statement and also ask their decision, and then we vote. And sometimes if something is not clear, we have to discuss. It might take longer time, but at the end we get very, very good and all agree from the city authority and also from the delivery partner. Next, please. Yeah, it's also direct to SDG because, you know, many projects that have been assessed is forgotten for the SDG. But this tool we can use direct to the SDG. And also, this is very clear that Jean already mentioned in the DSS project is related to the SDG 11 at the community sustainable city and community, and also the environmental resilience at SDG 13. Next, please, Kra. Yeah. And the key achievement from Bangkok project, we found that it's very high quality of the technical project. We use the GIS map and for the flood list map, and also increase the coordination between stakeholders on data collection and risk assessment. It can help to inform various decisions from the urban planning and also from the hydraulic engineer for this one. And also increase the public awareness on the list of information. That is very, very good because Bangkok, you know, now is have problem about the flood warning. So, and also increase the capacity of different departments that you can see. All the departments have to come together, sit together, and then discuss what happened. It's not working like the silo, but it's work more collaborative and also tackle the flood list. That is very, very important. Now we have to work together, not only one department take the decision. This is the thing that I would like to share for this. So it's turn back to you, Cass. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ketima, for highlighting a few of your experiences of applying the tool in real life on the ground. I would like to invite Richard Wood from Mott MacDonald to share a few reflections from his perspective. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Cass, and also thank you, Kun Ketima, for your comments there. So as mentioned, I'm the team leader for the delivery partner for the Bangkok DSS intervention. So I've had first-hand experience of applying the SDG tool to the live project since our sustainability principles selection workshop, which was in February 2020, so nearly 2 years. Just before I start my slide, I just want to also go back to the session we had a minute ago, the example workshop, and we showed there was 5 sustainability principles shown, and we did a poll on whether they should be included or not. I said I did cheat slightly, I do know the results, but I can confirm that all 5 of those principles were selected for this project. So although there was discussion around one that was mentioned, so sorry, I just thought to spoil that and give the result. I hope that's okay. So I've been asked to just provide some of my insights and experience. So I obviously just wanted to start with some of the positive impacts from using the tool, and some of these would have been touched on in earlier speakers. But overall, projects, I would say, definitely help to align the projects or towards the SDGs. I would say actually as far as even having influence on the project scope. So there were, we actually, included maybe some extra activities, workshops, maybe recommendations, deliverables to actually, as part of the process, to achieve better performance against some of the performance criteria. I'd then say that, I think it's fair to say that everyone's sort of heard of the SDGs, but not everybody necessarily knows how to apply them to a live project, and then how to actually assess how the project's contributing towards their achievements. So, this tool basically does exactly that. Now, earlier you saw the SDG profile shown a couple of times during this event, and for me that's such a great way to visualize the alignment of the project with the SDGs, as you saw, and it is obviously it's unique. So that comes out of that selection process at the start, and it's unique to every single project. So every single project, if you go through the process, should have a unique profile, and it also represents the maximum potential alignment we can achieve towards the SDGs, I think was mentioned earlier. I would say that the tool, I think this has been mentioned, the tool is adaptable, and the ongoing assessment process that we went through in the workshop session a minute ago, that can easily be tailored and refined to basically improve the process, which is what we've done. I can give some examples of that, and also to suit feedback from the stakeholders and their preferences of how they think it should be done. And finally, the project promotes a wider project understanding of the scope across all teams, all stakeholders, and it also gets great participation and also promotes team building. And I've put a few pictures there on the right from some of our earlier workshops. I think one's from the second workshop, my first workshop, one's from the selection workshop. You'll notice this was early 2020 when we were allowed to sort of meet in person. The more recent ones have been obviously online, but that hasn't affected the outcomes in the process. Next slide, please. So just a few of the challenges, perhaps that are, these are maybe personal reflections. So the initial selection workshop, we went through the process earlier. That could be potentially quite challenging if you're unfamiliar with the process. Obviously, this is a new tool. I personally hadn't had experience of it before, and the other part of that is sometimes there was elements of this particular project that weren't fully defined at the outset. Some of the scope was to be, as we were progressing, we were going to refine the scope. So that made the selection of the relevant sustainability principles perhaps more challenging. So I think as a learning point from that, it's good if personally, to spend the time to review it, and obviously this session is part of that, but to review and understand the process and review the performance criteria and principles, so you have some advanced understanding, and from a personal point of view, that made things easier. The actual assessment workshop can be quite lengthy, I would say. On my particular project, we're talking about the DSS intervention. We had 97 performance criteria selected from that selection process. So that made quite a lot of time to go through and review them initially, but I would say we improved that process, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. I would also say that the wording of some of the performance criteria definitions were quite complex, maybe, and it was maybe a bit of a challenge to understand. Some of the criteria are quite similar, the wording is very similar, and there's subtle differences between, and I personally, obviously, I'm a native English speaker, but there was a few where I was, had to reread a few times. So obviously for our delivery city partner, BMA, obviously would have been more challenging from them because they're not native English speakers, many of them. So I would say that the actual wording has been revised. There was a new version of the assessment tool, the definitions, the user guide, and the framework that was shown earlier in one of the earlier slides, and that was earlier, middle of last year, I think it was. That was done by unhabitat, obviously, and they've improved or I would say simplified the wording for some of the criteria. So we're now using that simplified wording, which has obviously helped. Now, I would say, even though I've said that it was a bit challenging initially with the amount of criteria and understanding the definitions, the more you work through the process, the easier it gets. And that's for two reasons I found. Because you become more familiar with the sustainability principles and the selected performance criteria. I can't name every 97 now, but I know most pretty well, and I don't have to keep rereading the descriptions every time. And also, we develop a clearer plan of how we're going to achieve those through this process as we progress. And then also another point is, once we saw the scoring system earlier, once you achieve a score of 3, really that's the best you can do. Typically that'll be later in the program, but we have achieved quite a number of 3s for certain things. And when we do the next assessment, there's no real need to go back and reassess those performance criteria because they're effectively complete. Next slide. Thank you. And just to finish with a few learning points, sort of following on from those challenges. So we worked as a team, we worked closely with the local Kumkitima and the local UN Habitat team to refine the process, both taking sort of feedback from the city partner BMA, and we have every 2 weeks we have a team catch-up progress meeting. We talk about the planning for the workshops and often talk about improvements. So a few things we did. The first workshop we did, the presentation was in the same session as then the assessment process. So that there was we presented our progress and presented a summary of the key deliverables in the review period as part of that process. That made the day quite long. So subsequent workshops, we've done the presentation perhaps typically a week before. So our progress presentation before the workshop, to both shorten the workshop on the day so we can focus on the scoring of the performance criteria, and also to give BMA a sort of time to reflect on what we presented and to reflect on our progress and to help them with their scoring. Another thing that I personally have done and I found very helpful, when I do a pre-assessment scoring before the workshop, it was mentioned earlier. Obviously now I'm reviewing the previous scores from the previous workshop and considering, have I improved, or as a team, have we improved on those performance criteria? So what I do if I do think we've improved, I clearly highlight that change on the sheet, and then I provide written evidence, justification of why, and then I give that to Kunkitima. And then when we have the workshops, you can focus on the performance criteria that I've said we've changed, and also she's got my justification. I can obviously expand on that in the workshop, but the information's there. There's my justification, and that makes the process a lot quicker and a lot easier on the day. The definition of scoring, just one thing, in the initial stage, there was some confusion around the scoring. So I won't go into the detail, but we resolved that quickly. And so it's important to make sure everyone understands the scoring process before you start, obviously. And I've talked there about the more simplified description of the performance criteria, which helped a lot. So just a couple more points. Something else that we like to do is after the workshop, we like to have an internal debrief to both review the comments and the scores, and then to capture our plans for achieving future higher scores in the future. It's very important to do that maybe within a week or so of the workshop. If you wait until 2 or 3, 4 months before the next workshop, it's obviously that much harder to remember, and also you don't get the time. You want to implement the changes now, well in advance of the next workshop, to gain those additional improvements. Part of that is keeping records as well. So during the workshop, there's a lot of discussion, both with you and Habitat and also BMA, around how, what do we think we can do to actually improve that score in the future. So it's important to record that and then take that as an action, and within your team, and make sure people are acting on that. I should say that the scope of projects, typically I'm sure we're all familiar, many projects scope changes. This project's no different, including budget challenges that we've had. So that actually, you find that some performance criteria that you thought were achievable when you did the selection of sustainability principles actually no longer is. In this case, we changed pilot area sort of partway through the project, and there were certain impacts on that. So we ended up deselecting a few performance criteria. So it's important to be able to justify that. I think it's also important to accept, both as a personal thing, I had to accept that I couldn't get a 3 for every performance criteria, because some of the alignment, some of the principles we selected were in sort of debate. Well, we probably can't fully contribute that, but we can do some things. And for those ones, realistically, we're not going to get a 3. But as long as people realize that, it's not like a tool to formally assess a project, or it's a tool to help you align. And my last point there is just that the actual guidance talks about assessing your performance for the workshop against your deliverables. But what I would say is, we've got a 2-year program, approximately, probably got sort of 7 or 8 deliverables, but there's times when we don't have many deliverables between the workshops. So the last workshop we did, we only had 1 formal deliverable, and that was for a flood model. So that only covered quite a small area of the sustainability principles. So when we present our progress, I don't just focus on deliverables, I focus on actual progress. There's many other things like workshops and many other technical notes and all sorts of things we do, which cover many other aspects of the project, not just the formal deliverables. Next slide. So just to conclude, I definitely can say that the DSS intervention is obviously heavily aligned with SDG 11, which is Sustainable Cities, and SDG 13, Climate Action, and that's obviously demonstrated in our profile, which I discussed earlier. So the SDG Tool has definitely had a major influence and direction the project towards these goals, and in turn, that helped us to achieve long-term climate resiliency in Bangkok. And my last point, I just put a picture there of a train that I saw. Actually, I'm currently based in Tokyo. This was commuting into Tokyo a few weeks ago. This train went past, managed to just get a picture of it as it went past. I don't know where it was going. I haven't seen it since, but I would like to ride on it one day. But I would say, as a delivery partner, we've been on our own SDG train on a journey. We've learned a lot. We've been proactive and worked as a team to help improve the process, and we're coming close towards the end of our journey. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. So maybe one can say that you are on track with your project. Thank you once again for the reflections. I think it's quite useful to hear reflections coming from direct application we do recognize there are some very clear sort of benefits of the tool, but obviously, since it is a pilot version in a way, let's say the potential for improvement is also very well received. So thank you so much for that, Richard. I'm looking a little bit on the time, and we have a few minutes left. So perhaps we could open up the floor. Would there be any questions or reflections from the audience? And I was just wondering, and maybe just to kick off, so I think every day we learn that we need to accelerate our actions and our engagement in terms of addressing climate change. And we heard from this session what the SDG tool can do in that regard, or at least contribute to. So I was wondering, maybe some of the panel members would have any reflections on this. Tools like the SDG tool that we have been discussing today, are such tools useful in terms of creating a focus in addressing issues related to climate change and resilience? Do we have enough tools, or does this tool play a role in the flora of activities and engagements that we have, globally speaking? I don't know if any one of the panel members have any reflections on that.
Klaus, I think I've already touched on it in my presentation, but I did, as I think I said there's a lot of, everyone knows about the SDGs. There's a lot of talk about it, you hear it all the time. But actually, there's one thing to talk about it, but how do you actually achieve it? And that's the hard thing with anything, making it tangible. How do I both achieve, and how do I monitor, or how do I track that achievement? And without that tool does exactly that. Without the tool, it's just talk. Where with the tool, you've got something to show and something to and not just the assessment. It does, as I said, it does direct the scope of the project. I mean, I've actively modified the scope, purely to help achieve, which I wouldn't have done without the tool. I wouldn't have, just so for me, that's the benefit. That's the power of the tool.
No, great. Thank you so much, Richard. If I may turn to Pavaris from the Bangkok Municipal Administration. Do you have any additional reflections or comments from your side in terms of how the project has helped address climate change? The project as such, but of course, if you have any additional reflections on the SDG tool, that would also be most welcome.
In my opinion, I think SDG tool or workshop is really useful for this SDG project, because the first reason we can use SDG tool for calculate SDG profile. It let me know that which SDG are direct or indirect impact with this project. And the second reason is help us for measure the success of the project implementation in terms of climate change. And we can use this tool help to make strategy decision for develop project in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pavaris. I'm trying to see whether we have any questions from the floor, but I cannot see anything. And we also are rapidly approaching our destination, our arrival, 10:30. So maybe we can take this opportunity and unless there are any other reflections from the panel, otherwise maybe we can take the opportunity and close the session. If Peter Turner is still with us, I would like him to join us in a couple of seconds. But first of all, I would just like to say thank you so much to the panelists for your very valuable contributions and for organizing this session. So thank you so much, Pavaris from Bangkok Municipal Administration. Thank you so much, Richard from Mott MacDonald, and your great work. Thank you, Ketima, and then Jean and Matthias for taking us through the workshop. Peter, may I invite you to say a few remarks?
Of course, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, thank you. Well, hi everyone. I'm Peter Turner, head of the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office Global Future Cities Programme. And I'm very pleased to be here today to hear the session and to give some closing remarks. Well, thanks again to all the presenters and contributors. As Class says, it was a really superb session, and I really enjoyed the interactive element. I thought it was really effective, and it was really, really interesting to hear about all the experiences of all the presenters. And I can certainly reflect from the Global Future Cities perspective that you know, we've worked in 19 cities around the world, and you know, the social development goals tool, assessment tool, has been used you know, across these cities, and you know, the feedback has been really, really good. So you know, really positive from around the world reflections. I mean, it's clear that FCDO really fully recognises the importance of addressing climate change and SDG in cities. And I have to say, I'm delighted with the success in this area of the Global Future Cities programme. And I think it's absolutely clear that the SDG project assessment tool, with the support of UNH, has been absolutely central to this success. And of course, the excellent success from our delivery partners, including, of course, Mott MacDonald, whom we heard from today. So thanks to you as well, Richard, and your team. I mean, as we've heard, the SDG tool is a very, very powerful tool in the work to address the fight against climate change. So, you know, I'm really excited to see how it can develop. Its use can be expanded and developed over the coming months and years. And I, you know, brilliant, Richard, your reference to the SDG train. Fantastic. I think we'd all like a ride on that. But of course, although you're right that we're coming to the end of the track in terms of the Global Future Cities programme, clearly there are many, many more tracks going forward in the continued fight against global climate change. And you know, FCDO is absolutely committed to this fight against climate change. Finally, I'd just like to say thanks again to everybody, and I'd encourage you to join as many of the remaining Urban October events as you can. You know, and thanks again to all the contributors and to UN Habitat for organising this event and all this series of events. It's been really, really superb. So thanks very much. Back to you, Class.
Thank you so much, Peter. And really, really good to hear the perspectives from the FCDO on your continuous efforts in addressing climate change. And we do have an upcoming big event fairly soon, the COP26 in Glasgow.
Cool.
So I hope also this event managed to contribute to building towards that. Then once again, thank you so much, everyone, and thanks for the organizers, Innovate4Cities. I hope you will have a nice day or evening wherever you are. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.